Здравствуйте, welcome back to Russian Through Poems and Paintings. We're on day 102, so after reviewing just general case usage yesterday, today we want to look at nouns and start reviewing all of our case endings. And we'll start today by looking at nouns, at noun types, right? At nouns classified by the various types in terms of the set of endings a given noun takes. So hopefully this will be fairly easy review, right? We were very careful throughout books 1 and 2 to really spell out all the different types of nouns there are and make major distinctions. For example, hard nouns versus soft nouns. That's a very important distinction. If you're fuzzy on that, you want to make sure to nail that down today. And then also look out for various types of nouns that are irregular or unusual in some other sense. For example, the so-called special soft nouns that we talked about last year. Okay, let's start with a painting here. Another painting by Kustodiev, also entitled Mossling. This is probably his most famous Mossling. It's a painting. So let's look at this for a moment, and let's just take some vocab from it, and I'll give you here some sort of mock-up dictionary entries, and let's just remember what information these are getting across, and think about what types of noun we're looking at here. A lot of these nouns will probably be new, right? We're um, in some sense going back to the older imperial period and just getting kind of some classic vocab for just Russian stuff, right? A lot of these paintings are nice in the sense that they just kind of illustrate how Russian life used to be, and of course a lot of these terms are still important. Okay, so let's go through the list here. Gara, okay, that's mountain, right? Feminine. Now look at what follows. We have that's the genitive ending, right? So a good dictionary will give you the nominative singular, then the genitive ending, if it's a more or less ordinary noun, right? That sometimes can help us distinguish between various types. And then in this book, and also in a lot of good dictionaries, if there's some other form that may be just slightly unpredictable for whatever reason, they'll often list that. For example, the plural, the nominative plural of gara is gori, where we have that stress shift we talked about last year, and we'll review that also this year as well. Okay, cholm. Now look at this entry. We have with the stressed That's telling us that the genitive is chalma. And what does that in turn imply? It implies that this is an in-stressed noun. Okay, so that's a fairly important thing to watch out for when you're using a dictionary, right? Watching for this in-stress pattern that's reasonably common with masculine nouns, especially monosyllabic nouns, right? So chom, chalma implies that any ending we add to this noun will be stressed. It's an in-stressed noun. Okay, next, gorod, gorada would be your genitive, and then look at the plural garada. Okay, that's telling us that this is one of those masculine nouns that forms its nominative plural using a stressed or stressed ya, right? So that's a kind of peculiar feature of, again, certain masculine nouns. And as you know, hopefully you remember that there's no way to predict that, right? We just have to learn that certain nouns are irregular in that way. A small city is a gradok, gradka. Okay, what's that telling us? Well, it's the fact that we've written out the entire genitive form here is showing us that we have a mobile vowel, right? That O is a mobile vowel, which we could guess in this case. It's a diminutive ending, so it's actually quite predictable that that's going to be a mobile vowel, but here we see the dictionary entry confirms that. Tree is diereva. That's an ordinary hard neuter, but the plural is irregular, derevye, right? Snow, snieg, a group of crows, vranyo, and that's kind of an odd collective noun. Honestly, the only reason I really put this here was to give you an example of a neuter ending in yor, right? Vranyo is something like a bunch of crows, right? It's kind of a collective, grammatically singular, but it's referring to a group of something. Zhenshina is woman. Okay, that's an ordinary hard feminine. What about mushina? Okay, that's a masculine noun that has feminine endings. Remember those, right? So obviously, this refers to a man. It's going to be grammatically masculine, right? So, for example, we would say etet mushina, right? This man is doing whatever, right? Anything going with this noun would be masculine, but the noun itself, its endings are feminine. Tower, bashnya, that's a soft feminine. Kolokol, Now look at the plural, kolokala, right? There's another, like город, города, kolokol. The plural is kolokala. That masculine nominative plural in stressed ah. For example, instead of kolokoli, right? You might guess that that plural would be kolokoli, right? Kolokoli or whatever, but no, it's kolokala. A bell tower, soft feminine, kolokolnya, krysha, ordinary feminine, церковь, church, церкви. Okay, that's telling us two things. It's telling us, first of all, that this is an E noun. Remember those E nouns, as we call them, right? They are feminine nouns that end in a consonant. And remember, if that a noun ending in a consonant could be feminine or masculine, right? If it's a soft consonant. So we have to just simply learn that церковь is a feminine E noun. And also here we see церкви, that's showing us that the O is a mobile vowel, right? So all sorts of things we're learning from these entries. Гармонь, that's an accordion. Now look at that genitive ending, ya, гармония is the genitive form. Now what does that tell us? That this is masculine, right? We can't tell by looking at the nominative singular, but once we get that genitive singular ending, we can see this is a masculine noun and not a feminine E noun like церковь. A dome, like on a church building. Купол, the plural is купола, right? So again, that peculiar nominative plural form. A cross is kрест, креста. Okay, that's an in-stress noun, right? That stress on the genitive ending is telling us that any ending we add to this noun will be stressed. Дым, hard masculine. Лошадь, feminine E noun. Облако, okay, that's a hard neuter, but we see the plural is облака. There the stress shift is unpredictable. Земля is a soft feminine. Plural земли, again, that stress shift we talked about last year and which we'll review. Небо is a hard neuter, but look at the plural, небеса. Okay, that's obviously an irregularity that reaches back to a very old class of nouns in Slavic that, again, in some cases like that, you used to have a whole peculiar pattern of a certain noun type. And in modern Russian, only certain forms may have managed to hang around. So again, there are reasons historically that explain these irregularities. Anyway, vid is a view or appearance, hard masculine. Signy, signie, that is a plural only noun, right? That means that noun is, it only appears in the plural, so that can be one sleigh or multiple sleighs. Sanki, and you see the genitive sanuk, that's a diminutive, right? So what's a little sleigh? Well, it's a sled, right? And again, plural only. Sanki could mean one sled or multiple sleds. Viet, that's a branch. And what gender is that? Feminine, right? Again, the genitive ending here is showing us that that is a feminine E noun. Now we see the diminutive, a small branch or a twig, is a vietka, and that's just an ordinary feminine noun, hard feminine. Okay, so let's look these over, and this may be a bit repetitive, but see if you can guess the gender and hard or soft features of these nouns just by looking at this little dictionary entry. Okay, gora, gari, right? I'll go ahead and read out the entire genitive form. That's feminine, hard, right? Bashnya, feminine, soft, right? Ya, you see that we can look at a Russian word and tell just by looking at it whether it's hard or soft. That's not some kind of a guessing game, right? We see the ya, that's showing us that the final consonant N is soft. Number 3, лошадь. Okay, is it hard or soft? Soft. Again, that's obvious, but now the question is it masculine or feminine? And the ending E is showing us that this is a feminine E noun. Number 4, гармонь, гармония. Okay, same problem. That's clearly soft, but it takes the genitive ending to tell us that this is in fact masculine. We can't tell simply by looking at гармонь. So that's a soft masculine. Number 5, церковь, церкви. Okay, again, feminine E noun, mobile vowel. There you go. Number 6, oblika. That's a hard neuter, right? Oblika, hard, clearly neuter. Number 7, vranyo. Okay, that's neuter. It ends in an or a yeah. In this case, a yo. And clearly that's soft, right? That yo. Okay, of course, here we also have a soft sign. That's very obviously a soft noun. Neuter soft. Number 8, dzierva. That's a hard neuter. Number 9, saini. Okay, that's a feminine form, although it's kind of hard to tell by looking, right? I should really maybe have included that in the list here. And a good dictionary would probably do that, right? But anyway, it's a plural only noun. It's soft. Again, we can tell simply by looking. Saini, right? That's a soft plural only noun. Number 10, sanki. Again, we can tell that that's plural only. Now, here's a good little detail, right? Is that hard or soft? Well, we see the E there, so in that sense we would think of it as soft. But remember, the reason for the E here is not really inherent softness, right? There's nothing soft about ka, right? This is the spelling rule. So you might want to think back and review that, right? That's the 7-letter spelling rule from book 1, telling us that we simply can't have U here, right? And so, look at the genitive plural sanuk, right? There we're clearly back to hardness, right? So this noun is not inherently soft. We're writing the E because of this so-called spelling rule. Okay, number 11, viet. Okay, clearly soft and feminine because we see it's a feminine E noun. Number 12, vietka. That's a hard feminine, clearly. Number 13, zhenshina, hard feminine. 14, mushina, hard masculine. Okay, there we have to be careful. And, the only way we really know that that's masculine is to know the meaning of the word, that it refers to a man, right? Or it could be a male animal or whatever the case may be. So despite having feminine endings, we would indeed say that that is a masculine noun, right? For example, let's add a verb to it. The man was at home. Mushina был, right? Any verb or adjective that goes with one of these nouns is going to take its masculine form because this is a masculine noun, but it takes feminine endings. Number 15, niaba, that's a hard neuter. Number 16, zemlya, that's a soft feminine, right? A very well-known poslovica, любишь кататься, люби санки возить, right? If you like to roll around, right? If you like, meaning in this case, if you like to go for a ride, then you better also like to drag the sled, right? You've got to pull the sled sometimes as well. Okay, let's review the major noun types. Hopefully this is old hat by now, but you may need to revisit some things that may have struck you as subtle back in book 1, right? For example, hard versus soft endings, right? So here's a quick rundown with some mock dictionary entries, right? Look at masculines. Cholm, cholma, garmogne, garmonia, right? So remember the ending shown there is the genitive singular ending, and it's telling us some things about the stress shifts. But the main thing here to note is that these are both masculine. They end in a consonant. The first one is a hard masculine because it ends in a hard consonant, M. The second one is soft, garmogne. Here we see the soft sign. And it's very important to remember that hard versus soft is not some kind of mystery, right? We can tell if a noun is hard or soft simply by looking at its ending, right? Either its ending or in this case, its final consonant. Look at feminines, garra, garri, right? That's a hard feminine. And then a soft feminine in ya, bashnya, bashnya, right? Again, we can tell that's soft just by looking at it. We can tell that it's feminine just by looking at it. Right, next we have neuters, nieba, and then a soft one, varanyo. Okay, remember the soft neuters can end in a ye or a yo, right? Either of those would be a soft neuter ending, and the hard ending is o. Okay, now, one little problem. If we look over these types so far, we remember that generally we have really good news in Russian because almost any word, any noun, in Russian, you can simply look at it and determine its gender, right? A lot of languages aren't so lucky, right? Think French or German or whatever. Now, there is one major exception in Russian, and that is nouns that end in a consonant, a soft consonant, right? So, for example, compare garmoň, and then you see the genitive ending ya. Okay, that genitive ending is telling us that this is a soft masculine, right? Because we can tell that ya is a masculine genitive ending, right? Therefore, this entry garmoň, garmonya, we can tell that we're dealing with a soft masculine. But look at Viet. Okay, that's an e noun, right? We see the genitive ending e. That's a dead giveaway that this is an e noun, and that in turn means that this is a feminine noun, a soft feminine, right? Now again, compare those two nouns. They both end in a soft sign, a soft consonant. We really can't tell just by looking at the nominative singular whether it's masculine or feminine. So we would have to either have learned that, or we'd have to look up the word in a dictionary to be sure. Okay, one other important type of word that's somewhat odd. Words like mushina, which means man, right? That is a masculine noun, despite the fact that it takes feminine endings. Okay, so remember, the noun itself takes feminine endings. It will always take feminine endings, but every word associated with it, like an adjective or a verb, right? Those forms are going to be masculine because this is indeed a masculine noun. So, for example, if we were saying an old man, we could say starý mužina, right? Starý, right? The masculine form. Okay, anyway, now look at some other entries, right? Город, города, and now here we have an additional bit of information, namely the nominative plural города. Right, in some cases, if a noun is unusual in a certain way, we might need to list an additional form. In this case, we're seeing that this noun город has a nominative plural in stressed a instead of the expected y, right? So there's no way to know that by looking at the form город, right? So here we're seeing, oh yeah, the plural is города. Now another example, городок, городка. Why have we written the entire genitive singular form there instead of just the ending? Well, in this case, it's to show that that o is a mobile vowel. The final o, see how it disappears when we add the ending? It's squeezed out. Again, that's something we could probably guess would happen, but we can't be positive that what looks like something that could be a mobile vowel is a mobile vowel. So again, we would have to consult a dictionary to be certain in some cases. Okay, let's start with feminine nouns and look over feminine nouns. Here we have all the different special types of nouns, right? Starting with hard feminines, soft feminines in the singular and plural. Now, then we have special soft feminine nouns, iya. Now, let's think for a moment. Those are soft nouns. We can tell that a noun like leksia is soft simply by looking at it. But these nouns we're calling special soft, we have to group them separately because of the forms in the black box. Note how those forms in the dative and prepositional, right? Leksii, right? We get an ee popping up there instead of maybe yeah, which we might expect in those cases, right? So because those endings are unusual, we have to group these special softs separately. Now remember, the good news here is that we can spot these just by looking, right? Any noun ending in ya is a special soft feminine noun. So it's going to follow this pattern. Finally, we have the e nouns we mentioned. These are feminines that end in a soft sign, right? A soft consonant. And again, if we see a word like tetrades, we don't know what gender that is, right? Simply by looking. We would have to simply know that that is indeed a feminine e noun and not a soft masculine. Okay, but if it is an e noun, it's going to follow this pattern. And again, we look over all those endings, we see that they are also soft. This is another type of soft feminine noun. Okay, let's fill in the blanks with a few feminine nouns. Right, be careful to refer to the table, review the table if you need to, right? We have a lot of endings to assimilate, right? And, that's obviously an ongoing process. You can't always expect to just spontaneously produce every last ending, but in theory, we have to assume that you're familiar with these endings from last year. We really can't move on without assuming that you have a pretty good grasp of these case endings. Okay, so first let's use gara, which is a hard feminine. Okay, and we want to say, let's see, mustaim na blank, meaning we're standing on a mountain or on a hill, right? Mustaim na garria, right? That's a prepositional case form there telling where, gidya. Mustaim na garria ili na chalmia, right? Or on a hill. I don't think we're really on a mountain. Set the blank открывается вид на город. So from this blank, a view onto the city, a view of the city, вид на город открывается, is opened. Okay, it looks like we need the genitive, right? The view from, right, from off of the mountain. So that's going to be set the горы, горы. Number 2, let's use bashnya. Okay, that's a soft feminine, meaning tower. Do you see these tall blank? Okay, it looks like we need just a plural accusative here, which is going to look just like the nominative plural. Вы видите эти высокие башни? Башни. Now the follow-up. Вы видите самую высокую blank? Okay, now we need the accusative singular, right? Do you see the tallest tower? Вы видите самую высокую башню? Башню, right? Accusative. Number 3, колокольня, meaning a bell tower. Okay, let's say these towers are blanks. Okay, we have multiple towers, so I think we're going to need a nominative plural, right? These towers are bell towers specifically. Эти башни, колокольни. In these blank, there are bells. In these blanks, there are bells, right? Есть колокола. Okay, where are the bells? Well, в этих blank, in these bell towers. Prepositional plural telling где в этих колокольнях. Okay, if you were doing an exercise like this on your own, you would have to look for clues, right? Contextual clues. In a lot of cases, look at the modifiers, right? Here we have в этих. That's showing us pretty clearly that this is v followed by the prepositional. Number 4, земля, the ground or the earth. On the blank lies snow. Okay, sounds like another где expression, prepositional case. На земле лежит снег. Сани легко катаются по снежной blank. Okay, here we have, again, a preposition, so we simply need to remember what case does по take. We use that a lot in first year with verbs of motion. It takes the dative, right? So, по снежной земле. The sleighs easily roll, literally, or ride, or glide, or however you want to say it. They glide easily along the snowy ground. Number 5, sanki, okay, sleds. Now this is a plural only form we mentioned, I think, yesterday, right? A sanki is a small sani, right? And that's what we're saying here. Blank is a small sled. Now here, this is a bit funny for English speakers because we're using plurals here, even though we're kind of just giving a definition, right? What is a sled? Well, it's kind of like a small sleigh. Okay, so we need the plural sanki. Sanki это маленькие сани, right? Again, a sled is a small sleigh, but we're using plurals everywhere because these verbs are plural-only nouns in Russian. Вы видите на картине, где дети катаются на blank? Do you see in the painting, in the picture, where the kids are riding around on sleds? Okay, so again, they're on the vehicle. We need a где expression. That'll be na sankach. Again, prepositional plural. Number 6, sani. Okay, now we're back to talking about sleighs, right? The big vehicles. Again, plural only. Сегодня праздник Масленица. Люди катаются, то есть ездят на blank. Okay, and this is going to be an in-stress noun, kind of a peculiar noun generally. Anyway, people are riding around, right? And again, we haven't really used this verb katatsa. It means to go for a ride. We'll learn more about it later in this book. So a synonym roughly could be ездит, right? They're riding around by vehicle on sleighs, right? Nasanyach. Nasanyach. Prepositional plural. Number 7, женщина, hard feminine. Do you see the blank in the middle of the painting? Who is riding together with this blank? Okay, we could look at the picture and see we're dealing with one woman. We could also look at the clue here. Кто катается вместе с этой? С этой. Right, that's showing us we've got this the preposition that's going to take the instrumental, and in this case, instrumental singular, right? So, do you see the woman in the middle of the painting? Accusative. Вы видите женщину в центре картины? Who's riding together with this woman? Кто катается вместе с этой женщиной? Right, instrumental singular. Number 8, ветка, a little twig or a little branch. На каждой ветви и даже на каждой маленькой blank лежит снег. Okay, our subject is at the very end, right? Snow is lying on every branch, right? Ветвь, we remember, is an E noun. That's just a normal branch. And then, as we learned, we have this diminutive ветка, right? Which is it's a form derived from ветвь, with that diminutive feminine ending ka, and so that's referring to a little branch, maybe even a twig. By the way, you could also have a веточка, right? Which would more clearly, right? It's a diminutive of a diminutive, right? A little tiny twig. Okay, so on every branch and even on every little twig or small branch, на каждой маленькой ветке лежит снег. Все сегодня в снегу. Everything today is in snow, meaning everything's covered in snow. Number 9, церковь, right? A church. Okay, that is an E noun, right? We've been told that these are all feminine nouns, so here we can conclude that this is indeed a feminine E noun, but again, otherwise we would have to simply know that, right? It ends in a soft sign, so we have to know the gender separately from the form itself. Okay, над каждой blank и колокольней купол, а над каждым куполом золотой крест. Okay, here it's just a matter of knowing the preposition, right? Nad takes the instrumental, right? Above every church and bell tower is a dome, right? A купол, right? Над каждой церковью и колокольней купол, а над каждым куполом золотой крест. Okay, let's add another picture that we'll discuss here as we're doing these exercises. This painting is called Viet Maskosского Кремля, right? A view of the Moscow Kremlin by Vasily Vereshchagin. В те времена кремлевские стены были белыми. Сегодня они красные, конечно, right? So you probably know that the Kremlin walls today are red, but at one point they had been whitewashed, I assume, right? In any case, they were white, right? В те времена, right, in those times, back in the day, кремлевские стены были белыми, right? The Kremlin walls were white. Okay, so here's some vocab we could use to talk about this picture. Again, let's just look over these nouns, see if we know any, see what different types of nouns there are, right? Набережная, embankment. Okay, what's unusual about that? Well, it's not really a noun. It's actually an adjective, right, that stands alone as a noun. We saw that last year. Набережная. Remember, the rule there is once an adjective, always an adjective. So this adjective can stand by itself, but it's always going to take adjectival endings. Река, plural реки, note the stress shift. Стена, plural стены, again, that same stress shift we learned last year, and we'll review that at some point this year as well. Колокольня, there's a soft feminine, as we've seen. Даль, okay, what gender is that? Feminine, right? It's an E noun, right? There's also a phrase вдали, meaning in the distance. That's one word, вдали. Okay, берег, that's shore. Now look at the plural, берега. Okay, so there's an unusual masculine noun that takes stressed a in the nominative plural instead of y, or in this case it would be e. Берега instead of береги or something. Kremlin, the Kremlin, Kreml. Okay, Kremlya, that's telling us that this is a soft masculine noun. Chram, cathedral. Ariol, aroa. Okay, what's happened there? Well, we've given the full form to show that that yaw is indeed a mobile vowel. It drops out when we add any ending. Same thing with dvarets, palace, right? We see the genitive is dvartsa, and that means in turn that any other form where we've added an ending, the yeah will also drop out. Nieba, that's a hard neuter, but look at the irregular plural, nibisa. Okay, we could never have predicted that. Dzierva, another hard neuter, but again, look at the plural, dzirevye. We could never have predicted that. That's what dictionaries are for, right? Cloud, oblaka. Now the plural, ablaka. Now there's a stress pattern that is sort of predictable, but we know that it's probably going to shift in these neuters, but if there are more than two syllables, it's not quite clear to which syllable it will shift. So we really need an entry here to tell us. Again, well, let's look at the next one quickly. Aknoa is window, and hopefully you remember that stress shift, right? Okna. Now that, although we've given that form here, that's pretty predictable, right? A two-syllable neuter will almost always shift its stress to the opposite syllable in the nominative plural. Right, finally, zdanya, that is what kind of noun? Special soft neuter. Okay, so that's an extremely important class of nouns. Later in this book, we're going to learn why there are so many of those nouns. I'll go ahead and tell you right now. Most of them are verbal nouns, meaning they are nouns that were created from verbs, right? They all end up having that yeah, well, most of them, having that yeah ending, and that tells us we're dealing with a special soft neuter. Okay, look over the masculine nouns here, right? We have, again, a complete table. We see, again, the basic breakdown, right? Hard nouns, ordinary soft nouns, and by the way, keep in mind that muzier is also a soft noun. That confuses people sometimes, right? Ikratke is a soft consonant, right? And then finally, kritieri, that is a special soft masculine. And again, you see the black box. That one form here in the masculine is the only reason we really have to group that separately, right? Otherwise, it's acting just like any other soft masculine. Now, we may also remember quickly that there aren't really very many special soft masculines. There are a few. Another we saw last year was geni, right, meaning genius. But again, relatively speaking, there aren't that many special soft masculines, whereas there are tons and tons and tons of special soft feminines and neuters. Okay, let's fill in a few more blanks. Again, now working with masculines to describe the painting we just saw. Setava blank, and we're working with the word bierig for shore. So from this shore of the Moscow River, Москвы реки, открывается прекрасный вид на Московский Кремль. Okay, so again, look at the sa. Now, we have to be on our toes. Let's look for every clue we can find, right? Sa can take the instrumental, in which case it would mean with. But in this case, we see setava. Setava, that's clearly a genitive ending, so we're using sa in the sense of from, off of, or simply from, right? So literally from this shore of the Moscow River opens a wonderful view onto the Moscow Kremlin, literally. Right, so we need the genitive с этого берега Москвы реки открывается прекрасный вид на Московский Кремль. Okay, number two, храм, meaning a church, a cathedral. В самом центре картины мы видим blank. Okay, in the very middle of the painting, we see blank. Okay, it sure sounds like we're missing our direct object, so we're going to need the accusative, which is simply храм. Right, мы видим храм, accusative. А рядом с blank, we get another direct object, колокольню, meaning we see alongside the church, the cathedral, we see a bell tower. See that right in the middle of the painting? That's the bell tower of Ivan the Great, right? Колокольня Ivana Velikova. Okay, so again, рядом с, here we have sa in the sense of being alongside something. So that's going to take instrumental. So that'll be храмом. Рядом с храмом колокольню. Right, that is, we see a колокольня рядом с этим храмом. Number 3, Kreml. Okay, soft masculine. In the Moscow blank, there are cathedrals, bell towers, palaces, and other buildings. Okay, so va we see clearly is expressing где, and so that'll be prepositional. В Московском Кремле есть храмы, колокольни, дворцы и другие здания. Okay, why was it Кремле and not Kremlin? Right, note the stress. Well, because Kreml is an unstressed masculine noun. And if we were paying attention with the vocab just a moment ago, we saw that the ya, the genitive ending, was marked as stressed, right? And again, that implies that not only the genitive ending is stressed, but all endings we add to this word are going to be stressed. This is what we'd call an unstressed masculine noun, right? So, в Московском Кремле. Okay, number 4, u blank. Okay, what case does the preposition u take? Always genitive, right? So this is kind of a no-brainer. This is going to be genitive. And here we're expressing possession, so to speak, right? The Kremlin now, right, теперь, the Kremlin now has red walls, right? So that'll be у Кремля. У Кремля теперь красные стены, но когда-то, but at some point, как мы видим в картине, in the picture, as we see in the painting, они были белыми, right? At some point, the walls were white. Okay, number 5, орел. Okay, remember, we just saw that is a mobile yaw there. That's going to drop out whenever we add an ending. Okay, so here we have двуглавые. Okay, looks like a plural ending there, nominative plural, two-headed blanks. The two-headed blanks on the towers of the Kremlin are symbols of the Russian Empire, right? Okay, so what's the plural of орел, right? We're talking about the double-headed, the two-headed eagles atop the Kremlin towers, right? That'll be орлы, right? The yaw drops out. Двуглавые орлы на башнях Кремля, символы Российской империи. And as you probably know, in Soviet times, those were replaced by red stars. Okay, don't forget some advice. Не учи орла летать, а соловья петь. Right? Don't teach an eagle to fly or a nightingale to sing, right? Meaning don't tell others who know better than you anyway how to do things, right? Because no one flies like an eagle, no other bird flies like an eagle, and no bird sings like the nightingale. Okay, let's wrap this up with one more painting called Черное море. Note the neuter, right? Neuter endings there. This is a painting by Ayvazovsky. We'll see some more of his paintings. He's very well known for painting seascapes, including shipwrecks. Okay, a few more, just a bit more noun review here. Let's look at some types. Volna, okay, plural. Volny, right? That's pretty predictable, right? The stress is going to shift backwards in this two-syllable feminine noun in the plural. Anyway, wind, ветер, ветра. Okay, mobile vowel, we can see that here. A storm, буря, that's a soft feminine. A cloud is a туча, okay, that's a hard feminine. A ship is корабль. Okay, looking at that entry, is that masculine or feminine? It's masculine, right? Soft masculine, because we see the genitive is корабля. Okay, a little boat is a лодка. Sky is небо, as we know already. A cloud is облако. Again, plural, облака. And the sea is море. Okay, there's a two-syllable neuter. Look at the nominative plural, Maria. Right, again, we get that almost always predictable shifting stress in neuters of two syllables, right? We can almost always expect that to happen, but as so often is the case in Russian, right, there are exceptions, alas, but that rule is quite dependable. Okay, neuter nouns, let's look these over, right? Review your endings. Well, we have hard neuters, we have soft neuters. By the way, the term bелье, that's a kind of a collective noun, meaning literally the white stuff. right? So it's basically your undergarments, which one used to have laundered, right? And hence the modern meaning, just laundry, right? Stuff that needs to be laundered. So that doesn't occur in the plural, right? So anyway, if it did, we could predict the forms, right? It would be just like the other soft forms here with moria, except they would be stressed. Okay, and finally, special soft neuters. Remember, that's a major type. We mentioned already that it's because most of these special soft nouns, they come from verbs, right? So because you can form a noun from almost any verb in Russian, that means that you have a huge number of these nouns that follow the special soft pattern. Okay, let's supply some correct forms of some neuter nouns now to describe the painting. Okay, moria na черном blank. Okay, so we're obviously talking about location with the prepositional, right? Literally on the Black Sea, there is a storm. На черном море буря. Вдали мы видим одну маленькую лодку. Куда она плывет? Okay, in the distance we see one small boat. To where is it sailing, right? You may not be able to see that in the book. It's very tiny. Okay, anyway, number 2, солнце, the sun. Солнце не светит. The sun is not shining. Okay, pretty clear there. We need just a subject, right? So we don't need to change this form. Солнце не светит. Сегодня blank нет. Okay, another way to say the sun isn't shining is there is no sun, right? How do we do that? With нет plus the genitive, right? The genitive of non-existence. Сегодня солнца нет. Blank закрывают облака. Blank cover clouds. Okay, here we just kind of have to make sense of the context, right? Clouds are the subject. We can tell there by the plural verb закрывают, right? The clouds are covering the sun. So what we need here is a direct object, accusative, right? Despite the word order. Remember, don't be distracted by the Russian word order. For this case, with the neuter, it's going to be unchanged, right? So again, солнце. Солнце here in the accusative. Солнце закрывает облака. Number 3, небо, okay, the sky. On the sky, or as we'd say, in the sky, облака летят одно за другим. The clouds are flying past. Note the determinate motion, right? They're sort of flying past, so to speak. They're drifting one after another, right? Cloud after cloud. Okay, so again, we need a где expression. That'll be на небе, right? In the sky. Okay, now look at the part 2. Blank темное и мрачное. Okay, looks like a very simple sentence, right? Blank is dark and gloomy, right? So we just need a subject, a neuter subject that's going to be небо. Небо темное и мрачное. Number 4, облако, cloud. Волны в море идут одна за другой, так же, как на небе летят blank. Okay, the waves in the sea are going. Now, again, we had the idea that they're sort of being blown past. They're moving in a more or less determinate fashion. Remember all that grammar we did last year, right? So we have determinate verbs of motion. Волны идут одна за другой. The waves in the sea are moving past. They're underway, so to speak, one after the other, wave after wave. Так же, как на небе летят blank. In the same way as in the sky fly the blanks. Okay, we can tell we need a plural because of the verb летят, right? Летят is a plural form, right? It's not летит, it's летят. Okay, so the form we need is plural. It's облака. Okay, now take a moment to think about that. We know that that's a neuter, so the plural is going to be in a, right? Neuters form their plurals in a or soft ya, right? Now again, the issue here is where does the stress shift to? We can be sure it's going to shift somewhere with these neuters, but because we have more than 2 syllables, we can't really guess. We just have to know that it's облака. Okay, finally, 5 стихотворение which means a poem, and we see that that is a special soft neuter, right? We see that yeah, we can spot that just by looking and tell that it's going to follow the special soft paradigm. In the following blank, Afanasia Fieta, that's the genitive form of the name Afanasi Fiet, Pishitsa takom jemoria. Okay, so in the following blank, in the following poem of Afanasi Fiet, is written, or it is written, about the very same kind of sea. Right now, that sounds maybe a bit awkward in English with this passive construction. We could say the basic idea is that Afanasi Fiet, the poet, writes about the very same kind of sea that we see in this picture in the following poem, right, that you see there in the textbook. Okay, in any case, we need a prepositional, right, with v, in the following poem. Okay, watch out, this is a special soft neuter. So the ending is going to be e in the prepositional. That's not quite predictable based on the general paradigm for soft neuters. Okay, so that'll be в следующем стихотворении Афанасий Фета пишется о таком же море. Okay, if we say that word really carefully, стихотворении, right? Two e's at the end of that word, e. And again, if we're not careful to say that really clearly as the two syllables that it really is, then it can kind of all blend together, right? В следующем стихотворении. Okay, as you can imagine, when Russians are speaking at a normal speed, you wouldn't always hear those two distinct syllables. Okay, a couple of phrases meaning to do kind of pointless things. Ждать у моря погоды, right? To wait for weather at the seaside, at the sea, right? Or искать ветра в поле, right? To look for wind in the field, right? Two activities that are kind of pointless. Okay, so at the end of today's lesson, as will often be the case, we have a poem. I'm going to do these in separate videos, just in case you're someone who maybe doesn't like poetry very much. You can watch the video, or you can just ignore the poetry. Although I would encourage everyone to take the poetry seriously, because as I may have mentioned at some point, part of really being fluent in Russian in terms of just general cultural fluency, or even in terms of linguistic fluency, right, is knowing these poems, because a lot of, so many of them are very well known to Russians. They may be cited quite often in speech. So it's just kind of they form sort of the body of just text that Russians learn in school, and just sort of a kind of common knowledge. So knowing it is really great. And of course, a lot of it is just wonderful literature. So it's very rewarding in its own right. And thankfully, we're now getting to the point where we can make sense of a lot of this poetry. As we continue moving through book 3 and book 4, it's going to get easier and easier to read these texts, right? At this point, it still may be a little bit difficult. There are still some forms we haven't covered, and it's obviously not easy anyway to read real Russian. But I think you'll notice that if you take the time to really pay attention to these small texts and really study them and try to really master what they're getting across, then as you progress through these books, you'll get much, much better at reading Russian, which is a huge step. Okay, so that's enough for today. Until next time, до свидания.